They say courtrooms are supposed to be neutral ground, but that morning it felt like enemy territory. The air was cold, sterile even, but my palms were sweating. Not from heat, from rage. I sat quietly at my table, hands folded so tightly my knuckles turned white. Across from me, Damon. My ex-husband looked like he'd just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. Tailored suit, polished shoes, that same arrogant smirk I used to think was charming. God, I was so naive. Next to him sat Sabrina, his mistress, visibly pregnant. She was wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my rent when Damon and I first started dating. She looked like she was auditioning for a reality show. Perfect hair, flawless, makeup eyes full of smug satisfaction. Behind them, his sister Fiona scrolled through her tablet, one perfectly manicured finger tapping like she couldn't wait to leak the story. A PR queen in her own mind. She was probably already drafting a press release titled Damon Martinez Brave Father Betrayed Husband, and me, I was the villain in their story. The washed-up wife who couldn't keep her man, the one who was unstable, jealous, spiteful. They laughed. Right there in court, not loud enough to be held in contempt, but loud enough for me to hear it, loud enough for it to cut. Damon leaned over and whispered something to Sabrina. She giggled. Fiona covered her mouth to hide her smirk. Their attorney, he didn't even bother pretending to be respectful. Just sat there flipping through papers like this was a formality. They thought it was over. They thought I was broken. They thought I'd show up, cry a little, beg for scraps, and leave humiliated. Then the judge asked if I had anything else to present. I reached into my bag calmly, but my heart was racing and handed over a sealed manila envelope. No one took me seriously. Not until she opened it. Judge Lansing, sharp as a knife, known for never cracking a smile, slid on her reading glasses and began scanning the documents inside. Her eyebrows moved. Just slightly. Then she leaned back, looked at Damon, then Sabrina, then Fiona, and she said, "Well, that's interesting," just like that. The laughing stopped. And right before their faces started to crumble, before the panic settled in, I had one thought. If you're wondering how we got here, let me take you back to where it all began. 1 year earlier, things looked very different, at least on the outside. Back then, Damon and I were still living in the fixer-upper we'd bought just after our wedding. It had good bones, but the place needed work. A lot of work. I spent my days drafting blueprints for luxury homes, and my nights tearing down drywall in our kitchen, still in my work boots covered in plaster dust. That's who I was. Always building. Always fixing. Even when I shouldn't have been. Damon, he had just launched a gourmet food truck business, said it was his passion project. Translation, he'd burned through 2 investment rounds and was now funding it with my savings. He never said, "Thank you," just acted like it was expected. His family liked to say Damon had ambition. Meanwhile, I was the one juggling permit supplier invoices and home renovations on 2 hours of sleep. But none of that ever mattered to them. See, Damon came from old money. His family had legacy plaques on museum walls. Mine, we had pawn shop receipts and 3 jobs at once. His mother smiled politely when I spoke. His father shook my hand like he was judging the strength of my grip. And Fiona, his sister, oh, she was the worst. Fiona was the kind of woman who complimented your outfit while posting a meme that mocked it an hour later. She'd say things like, "I love how Ava's still so down to earth," then tweet, "Some people marry up and still stay small." But I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was the life Damon and I were building together. Or at least, that's what I believed. Then Sabrina showed up. She was introduced as a consultant to help Damon scale his food truck brand. She wore tight blazers, always smelled like expensive perfume, and took handwritten notes like a diligent assistant in a rom-com. At first, I didn't think much of it. I even invited her over for dinner once. She brought wine, complimented my cooking, and asked a lot of questions about how Damon and I met. I should have known then. She smiled too much, laughed too hard at his dumb stories. and kept finding reasons to swing by his meetings. One night I came home late from a client presentation. Damon wasn't in the kitchen or the bedroom. His laptop was open on the coffee table. I went to close it, and that's when I saw it. A receipt. Cartier. Diamond necklace. 5 grand. My first thought, oh, maybe it's for our anniversary. Except our anniversary had passed. No necklace. I never saw that jewelry, not in a box, not on a receipt, not around my neck. That was the first real crack. And once you spot a crack, you start to notice all the others. How Damon started locking his phone. How Fiona suddenly got so interested in Sabrina's career. How I kept waking up alone in bed because he was working late at a business that barely broke even. It's funny, the life I thought I was building. Turns out I was just laying bricks for someone else's future, and they were all in on it. I didn't know the full plan yet. Not then. But that receipt, it was the breadcrumb that would lead me all the way to the courtroom, and eventually to something a lot more dangerous than heartbreak. Revenge. My birthday fell on a Thursday that year. I wasn't expecting fireworks. Just dinner. A quiet night. Maybe wine and takeout. Something simple. Something real. Instead, I got a text from Damon at 4:23 p.m. Emergency catering gig. Truck broke down. Rain check tonight. I stared at my phone. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I did. And that was the problem. I believed him too often, even when I shouldn't. I wasn't even angry, just tired. Tired of making excuses for someone who didn't even bother hiding the disrespect anymore. I mentioned it to Mia, my best friend since college, who had never liked Damon. She raised an eyebrow and said, "You sure he's working on your birthday?" I shrugged. I don't know anymore. That's when she said the 6 words that changed everything. Then let's go find out. I laughed, at first thought she was joking. She wasn't. 15 minutes later, we were in her car. Following the GPS tracker, she secretly helped me install on Damon's phone 2 months earlier. Back when the lies started stacking up faster than I could count. We pulled into the valet line of a downtown hotel. Not a motel, not some dingy side street apartment. A 5-star hotel. Marble floors, glass chandeliers, staff that called you ma'am in hushed tones. We stayed in the car, watched from across the street, and then there he was, Damon, walking out of the elevator, holding hands with Sabrina. She looked radiant. Not just smug, not just proud. Radiant in a way only one thing explains. She was pregnant, visibly, beautifully, undeniably. And they looked happy. He placed his hand on her stomach like it was second nature, like this was their baby, their moment, their life. And me, I just sat there, frozen. Mia didn't say a word. She didn't have to. There's nothing to say when the truth slaps you across the face that hard. I didn't confront him, didn't scream, didn't make a scene. I just asked Mia to drive me home, quietly. When I got inside, I didn't even take off my shoes. I just grabbed the bottle of Merlot we'd been saving for some special occasion, poured a glass, and opened my laptop. You know what's funny? Pain has a way of sharpening your senses. In that moment, I stopped being the wife trying to fix everything. I became someone else. Someone who was done being stupid, done being polite, done waiting to be chosen. I logged into every single account with my name on it, every bank statement, every credit card, every shared drive, every email thread from his business. I backed it all up. Everything. Something in me told me to look deeper. So I did. And that's when I found it. A transfer dated 2 weeks earlier. $90,000. Gone. Moved from our joint savings to a holding company I'd never heard of, with a name that sounded like a tech startup or a shell corporation out of Miami, except this one was tied to an address I did recognize. Fiona's condo. That's when my heart stopped. They weren't just having an affair. They were moving money, hiding assets, covering tracks. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a blueprint, a plan, and for the first time in our marriage, I finally realized I wasn't part of it. I was the obstacle. But if they thought I was just going to sit there and disappear quietly, they forgot who I was, and now I had a reason to remember too. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't the betrayal that kept me up. It was the realization that this wasn't some impulsive affair. It was planned, structured, engineered. So I did the one thing that made sense. I called Juno. We hadn't talked in over a year. Life had gotten in the way like it always does. But the second she heard my voice, Ava, what's wrong? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her everything. The hotel, the pregnancy, the missing 90 grand. By noon the next day, I was sitting in her home office. Half coffee shop, half FBI bunker. Monitors everywhere. Password vaults, firewalls, facial recognition tools I couldn't even pronounce. She handed me a second mug and said, "Okay, let's hunt. Juno's not just smart. She's surgical." Within an hour, she had pulled Damon's shell company filings from 3 states. Guess who was listed as the registered agent, Fiona? Of course. Wait, you're telling me Fiona created the company Damon funneled our money into? Juno nodded, not even surprised. That's not even the juicy part. Look at the date. I leaned closer. The company was filed 5 months before I found that necklace receipt. 3 months before I even met Sabrina. It gets worse. Juno kept digging tracing emails, payment apps, and some less than legal message threads. And there it was, a money transfer. From Fiona's consulting firm to Sabrina Hayes, marked consultation fee, 5 payments, all before Damon ever introduced her to me. So now, it was confirmed. Sabrina wasn't just some flirty assistant. She was hired, handpicked, planted, positioned. A fake consultant dropped into my life like a loaded grenade. Smile and all, my throat went dry. They planned this. Juno didn't say anything, just turned her screen toward me again. Nevada Public Records, 2 sealed court dockets under Sabrina Hayes' name. Fraud. Identity theft. The charges had been reduced, never made the news. But the pattern was clear. This woman's a grifter, Juno said, tapping her keyboard. Not her first rodeo, but it was the next document that nearly made me vomit. It was a marketing deck, a PDF, with my name in it. Juno found it buried inside Fiona's firm archive, protected by layers of encryption. The file name, Project Reset, Rebranding the Martinez Legacy. And page 1, A flowchart. Damon, Paul's new family, clean public narrative. There was a timeline complete with the target dates for my mental breakdown, followed by Damon's public recovery. A soft launch of the new family dynamic, brand sponsorships, PR campaigns, a docuseries pitch, and a campaign to raise awareness for men abandoned by unstable spouses. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being erased, replaced, and marketed as the villain. The plan was to push me until I snapped to get it on video, leak it online, frame me as the unstable ex who couldn't handle her husband's success and new family responsibilities. So, when the divorce papers came, the world would already be rooting for them. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was being set up. I looked at Juno. Her jaw was tight. Her fingers were still flying across the keys. "They want a meltdown," I said, quietly. She looked at me, unsure. "Let's give them something better," I said. "Let's give them a case file." After that day with Juno, I changed. Not outwardly. To Damon, I was still the same soft-spoken wife, still making dinner, still asking about his day, still smiling like I didn't know he was planning to destroy me. But inside, I was done playing defense. I didn't raise my voice, didn't call him out, didn't mention Sabrina or the money or the fake consulting company. Instead, I started recording every conversation, every gaslight, every sweet little lie that used to make me question myself. One night, Damon came home smelling like a cologne I'd never worn. I asked if he'd had a long day. He sighed, said I seemed off lately, asked if I was okay, if maybe I should see someone. That's how he did it. Subtle, patient, always flipping the script. I just smiled and nodded. Meanwhile, my phone was recording the whole exchange from my apron pocket. He was trying to build a story where I was unstable. I was building a case that proved the opposite. But the real opportunity came a week later. From Fiona. I emailed her pretending to accept what was happening. Told her I was thinking about managing the optics of the divorce, that I wanted her PR help to keep things clean and avoid a public mess. She replied in 10 minutes. Smart move, Ava, let's chat. Of course she'd say yes. She couldn't resist a front row seat to my supposed downfall. We met in her office downtown. White leather chairs, cold air conditioning, a printed quote on the wall that said, "Control the narrative," or "Become it." Fitting. I wore soft colors, no makeup. Looked just tired enough to be believable. While she rambled on about branding and reputation recovery, I pulled the tiny mic out of my purse and slipped it under her orchid arrangement while she wasn't looking. She offered me herbal tea. I accepted. Then she started talking. Really talking. Fiona had no idea she was being recorded. She bragged about how seamlessly they'd set everything up. How Sabrina was easier to shape than I'd ever been. How messy women make clean PR wins. And then she said it. The judge won't believe a word she says. We own the narrative now. That line. That arrogant, smug, perfect line. I almost laughed out loud, but then she kept going. She mentioned her firm had a little extra leverage, casually dropping that Judge Lansing's nephew was one of their contracted copywriters. It was subtle. Too subtle for someone not looking for it. But I caught it. The tone, the smile, the implication. They weren't just playing dirty. They were banking on influence. I sipped my tea, smiled, nodded again like I was grateful for her advice. Fiona ended the meeting by squeezing my hand. You're handling this better than I expected, she said. Her tone sounded almost disappointed. I left her office, walked to my car, and sat in silence for a full minute. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. She had just handed me everything I needed. In her own voice, in her own words. All I had to do now was stay quiet and keep collecting ghosts. After I walked out of Fiona's office, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch, because now I had something stronger than anger. I had leverage. That night, I sat down with Juno again, and we built something, a kind of digital fortress. We called it the Vault. Inside that vault were audio files, Damon gaslighting me, Fiona bragging Sabrina, making shady deals, bank transfers, every suspicious movement of money from our joint accounts, shell companies, secret messages, invoices from Fiona's firm. And then we built the timeline. Every date, every payment, every lie mapped out like a crime scene. All roads pointed to the same truth. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had conspired. Juno encrypted everything. Multiple backups, password-protected links, a trail that not even Damon's overpriced attorney could wipe clean. Then we sent it. Not to Damon, not to Fiona, not even to my future lawyer. We sent anonymous tips, one to the IRS, one to the Judicial Ethics Office. With a simple message attached, concerned citizen reporting financial and legal misconduct involving a high-profile PR firm and a judge's family member. That alone would make them squirm. But that wasn't the end of it. Because as I was combing through our old legal files trying to remember what I signed without reading 10 years ago, I found it, buried in the prenup. A clause I didn't even know was there. In tiny font sandwiched between asset definitions and trust protections. If either party is found to have committed fraud or caused reputational or moral harm to the marriage, the prenuptial agreement shall be rendered void. Void. all those protections Damon's family built and all those loopholes meant to protect him, gone. If I could prove fraud, if I could prove moral harm, and now I could. I sat there in my office staring at that sentence over and over, and I started laughing. It wasn't joyful, it was release. Like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally exhaled. Juno looked up from her laptop. "You good? Better than good," I said. I just found the self-destruct button. That night, I printed everything, every screenshot, every email, every contract, every piece of evidence organized, labeled time-stamped. And I didn't just stash it away in a drawer. I mailed it to myself, certified, tracked, signed. Why? Because a certified letter creates a legal timestamp the court can't ignore. Once it's sealed, it's proof. Proof that I knew, proof that they knew, and proof that I acted long before the games came to light. As I stood in line at the post office clutching that heavy envelope, I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't broken, I was ready. They wanted to control the narrative. Too bad, because I'd just written the final chapter. And this time, it was mine. The morning of the hearing, I woke up to my name trending. Not in a good way. Fiona's PR machine had gone into overdrive. Headlines across social media, gossip blogs, even local news blurbs. Damon Martinez files for divorce from erratic wife of 12 years. Sources say Ava Martinez's emotional instability endangered their unborn child's future. A brave father and his new partner speak out. They even included a photo of me leaving my therapist's office 6 months earlier, looking tired, holding tissues. They painted it like a breakdown, a premeditated hit. The public thought they knew me now, but they didn't. They hadn't seen what was coming. I didn't panic, didn't call anyone, didn't even respond. I let the story spread, let them marinate in it. Because while they were busy writing fiction for the internet, I was finalizing something real. A little website Juno and I had been quietly building behind the scenes. Password protected, encrypted, time-stamped, legally backed up. Inside, everything. The recordings, the bank transfers, the emails, the prenup clause, the voice files, the footage from Fiona's office, all of it. We called it the Vault, and at 8:57 a.m., I sent the link to Judge Lansing's legal assistant with a polite message. Urgent supplemental evidence submitted under the right of response. Please present to Her Honor immediately. No theatrics, no drama, just facts. By the time I stepped into the courthouse, the air was buzzing with whispers. People looking at me like I was fragile, like they'd already decided I'd lose. Damon was standing by the window arm around Sabrina. She was glowing, fake glowing, like someone who'd been coached. His lawyer was grinning. Fiona sat 2 rows back, legs crossed, holding her phone like she was waiting for the perfect moment to hit publish again. I took my seat calmly. Didn't say a word. When court came to order, Damon's attorney went first, and he didn't hold back. He painted me as a paranoid, emotionally unstable housewife who'd grown resentful of her husband's success. Said I contributed nothing financially, that I was jealous of Damon's new beginning, that I was trying to sabotage a growing family out of spite. He wrapped up his little performance with this line, "Your Honor, my client has shown nothing but compassion throughout this painful process, while Mrs. Martinez has by all appearances spiraled into financial desperation and fabricated delusions of conspiracy." I didn't flinch. I just smiled. Judge Lansing looked down at her tablet. She adjusted her glasses, tapped the screen twice, then paused. The room went still. What she was reading wasn't part of their script, because I'd just changed it. She kept scrolling, line by line, screenshot by screenshot. She played a short clip, Fiona's voice filling the courtroom speakers. The judge won't believe a word she says. We own the narrative now. The bailiff's eyes widened. Damon turned pale. Sabrina stopped smiling. Judge Lansing closed the tablet, took off her glasses, and looked directly at Damon's lawyer. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I address this evidence? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Fiona's phone dropped to her lap, and in that moment, every lie they told, every headline they planted, every smug laugh they shared, it all started to crack. Because the real trial wasn't in the court of public opinion, it was right here, right now, and they were losing. The silence in that courtroom didn't feel like silence. It felt like pressure, like everyone was holding their breath at the same time, waiting. Judge Lansing looked over the rim of her glasses and said, "What I've seen here today suggests fraud, conspiracy, and public manipulation of the highest order." Damon shifted in his seat. Fiona sat frozen, her mouth half open. Sabrina clutched her bag like it could shield her from what was coming. The judge continued, her tone even but sharp. "This is not just a divorce case. This is a coordinated effort to destroy someone's character, financial stability, and reputation. That will not stand in my courtroom." She turned to me. "Mrs. Martinez, you've shown incredible restraint and intelligence under pressure. The court commends your conduct and the clarity of the evidence you've submitted." I swallowed hard. Then came the ruling. Effective immediately, full ownership of the marital home is granted to Mrs. Martinez. All business assets tied to her company, including intellectual property and ongoing contracts, are also hers. Damon stared ahead, blinking rapidly like the words weren't computing. Furthermore, Judge Lansing said all liquid assets previously held in joint accounts will be returned to Mrs. Martinez with interest. "Mr. Martinez, you are ordered to pay restitution for all unauthorized transfers, plus legal penalties." Damon's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but he just shook his head. He looked like a man watching his entire future burn down. But the judge wasn't done. As for Miss Hayes, she looked directly at Sabrina. "Given your documented criminal history and current visa status, I am referring this matter to federal immigration authorities for immediate review." Sabrina's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. And finally, Judge Lansing turned her eyes to Fiona. "Ms. Martinez, your own recordings implicate you in attempts to interfere with court proceedings, manipulate public opinion, and possibly exert unethical influence over this courtroom via your firm's internal staffing." Fiona tried to speak. The judge raised a hand. "You will receive a subpoena for a formal ethics inquiry. I strongly suggest you retain separate counsel." The room was so still, you could hear someone's pen roll off a table. "And let this be a message," the judge said, rising from her seat. "This court does not tolerate weaponized manipulation, disguised as strategy, especially not when used against someone who did nothing but try to protect a marriage." My heart was pounding, but my hands steady. Damon looked like he was trying to calculate how fast he could disappear. His empire, his image, his whole carefully built illusion gone. Sabrina, tears were streaming down her cheeks, her perfect mascara running like ink in the rain. "And Fiona!" Fiona finally stood, shaking her voice sharp with betrayal. She turned to Damon, pointed at him, like she'd been stabbed. "You said she was weak," her voice cracked. "You said she'd break." Damon didn't respond. Couldn't, because he knew exactly what I knew now. I was never the weak one. I was just waiting. And now it was their turn to fall. 6 months later, my name was on the cover of a magazine. Not because I was someone's wife, not because I survived a scandal, but because I rebuilt something from the ashes. My architectural firm was featured in a special issue spotlighting women designing spaces for others who had been through betrayal, loss, and rebirth. The article called it empowered architecture. I just called it healing one beam, one room, one foundation at a time. Juno, my brilliant best friend, was now my CTO. She ran the back end of everything, secured our client portals, protected our designs, and reminded me to eat lunch. She was more than a friend. She was family now. And as for the others, Damon was convicted of financial fraud and sentenced to 18 months. He's banned from operating or managing any business indefinitely. His real estate license, gone. Sabrina quietly left the country not long after her visa review began. No social media posts, no goodbye. Fiona's firm bled clients within weeks of the ethics investigation going public. Turns out, companies don't love working with manipulators. She still tries to spin the story, but no one's listening anymore. And me? I walk through the home. I rebuilt brick by brick. Same address. Same square footage. But it doesn't feel the same at all. Because now, every corner is mine. The kitchen has new countertops. The studio has skylights. There's a window seat in the living room. I designed myself just wide enough for a blanket, a journal, and a hot mug of coffee. This isn't just a house anymore, it's proof. They wanted to break me. They tried to replace me. They thought I'd fold under the weight of what they did, but all they did was clear the path. For me to build something stronger. No lies. No shadows. No manipulation. Just me blueprints and hand scars and all stepping into the life I always deserved. So, yeah, they laughed at me in court. But I guess karma has a construction schedule of her own. And mine finished right on time. If this story had you hooked, I want to hear from you. What was your favorite moment? The courtroom takedown, Fiona's scream, the final rebuild. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe. We post new twisted revenge stories every single day. Real drama, real betrayal, real justice. See you in the next one.